What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Well, yesterday, an absolutely insane rumor for Xbox started to make the rounds, throwing the entire development of Fable into doubt. But with most rumors, we do have to ask the question of, is this actually real? And we'll go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about Final Fantasy in the upcoming year, as it appears that Square has a pretty big announcement ready to go. And we'll also be talking about the FTC, Xbox, and actually Nintendo this time, as the FTC maybe excluding Nintendo with a bit of a strange reason. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're going to start today with Square Enix and a different department outside of Final Fantasy and really even just video games that having to do with blockchain technology and NFTs, as it appears that Square Enix is as excited as ever for the entire sector there. In fact, we can see this posted up. This is over on VGC. They say in a new letter discussing its plans for 2023, Square Enix president Yusuke Masuda has now said blockchain remains the biggest focus for its medium-term investments, despite what he called volatility in the blockchain space in 2022. Going on to say, however, in the wake of the aforementioned turbulence in the cryptocurrency industry, there is now a trend to view blockchain technology as a mere means to an end, and to discuss what needs to happen to achieve the end of delivering new experiences and excitement to customers. I see this as very beneficial development for the future growth of the industry. Oh, okay, we'll see about that one. Square Enix seems like an odd thing once again for them to be focusing on after what they did with a lot of their Western studios, get rid of them, and then they brought up the idea of using some of that money to invest into blockchain technology, and that was just ahead of the massive crypto crash. And again, we'll see what Square Enix actually does with this. I don't think they'll do something like throw Final Fantasy XIV into the mix, as it's kind of good on its own creating cash, but them developing a game that might tap into blockchain wouldn't necessarily put it past Square Enix. Also, we've been talking about that Famitsu article that went around interviewing a bunch of different developers and publishers around their plans for 2023. One of them was Konami. We talked about one passage that seemed to allude to the idea of Metal Gear Solid, but there's another one from Konami that seems to talk about a bunch of other projects even in development. We can see this posted up. Once again, VGC with the translation here from Famitsu from Konami, saying this year is the year of the rabbit, and we are planning new games for well-known series with the aim of making even greater strides. In addition, new projects that we have yet to announce to you are also deeply and quietly underway. Please look forward to Konami's future announcements. So Metal Gear has been going around quite a bit. I'm still wondering if it's going to be similar to Silent Hill, where there are actually a bunch of Metal Gear projects in development. That would be a really fun presentation to tune into. But I'm also wondering about Castlevania, which was another one that was rumored, because I think after seeing what Metroid Dread was able to accomplish and pull off with its sales, that a high-quality 2D Castlevania game would actually work. So that's the biggest thing I'd like to see from them, is maybe tackle Castlevania in that way, but based on the industry, I'm sure they'd rather go for a higher budget, higher quality 3D Castlevania game. But either way, it's fun to see Konami actually get back into video games again. Oh, and we did have Starfield's support page go live yesterday, and we can see this here with a question that was asked: what is Starfield's release date? It still says Starfield arrives exclusively on Xbox Series X, S, and PC in the first half of 2023, so they're still at least sticking to that claim. Now, we've heard that potentially Redfall could end up being a May release. Forza, I assume, is before that in April. So could we see a quick 1, 2, 3 release? Forza, Redfall, and then, say, Starfield in June to round out the first half of 2023. Certainly would be a pretty strong release schedule there heading into the second half. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with the insane rumor that was making the rounds all over the internet yesterday. And this has to do with Xbox and a game that we've seen very little of. I mean, really nothing. We've seen a CG trailer of it, which fine, because we got the title card as Fable, but we haven't seen gameplay, screenshots, concept art, not a lot. So, a rumor started to make the rounds yesterday that the game was having development issues, which isn't the first time. We've heard that there were problems internally, and it kind of makes sense based on the engine that they're using right now, which is Forza Tech. Yeah, it's the engine that's used for Forza, and they're adapting it to use in something like Fable, a bit different from a racing game. But we can see this posted up over on Twitter, and this is really what got the ball rolling for this rumor. It's from Idle Sloth, who says, Fable has been restarted internally. The most current build of the new Fable was deemed unplayable by most of the team. Basically starting from scratch in Unreal, the old Forza Tech version will never see the light of day. Going on to say that the Forza Tech version was about a quarter of the way done as of August 2022. This new version of Fable 4 is in Unreal is still very early. The new target window is Q4 of 2024. So just looking through that, there were some red flags that made it kind of unbelievable. The biggest one, the source is 4chan, where just anyone can post a rumor and just kind of get that thrown into the internet and see if anyone picks it up. But the other is the idea that they would restart from scratch, like now, and they would have it ready for Q4 of 2024, switching engines completely. That, if you're going to restart, think about Metroid Prime 4. Remember when they came to us and announced that they were restarting? That was a while ago. So do you think that with something at what we're assuming in our mind as being this grand scale game from Xbox, as Fable being ready in, 2 years? Probably not, but it didn't take too long as people started to look into this a bit more and respond to it, as we can see this, for example, over on Twitter from Christopher Dring, says, this is not true. And I will say, I looked around a bit, and yeah, I'm gonna agree with Christopher Dring on this one. It's not correct. Now, the one thing that I was reflecting, I was like, wow, that really did get moving along pretty well. People, I'm sure, second guessed it a bit, but they weren't exactly writing it off completely. Even me, I'm like, you know what? It's 4chan, but also it's Microsoft, and they haven't exactly been exuding confidence when it comes to development and releasing these different games, as we're seeing delays and hearing about issues behind the scenes. So when something like that pops up, that, hey, this studio that's used to making racing games with the racing game engine, trying to adapt it to a large 3D action-adventure RPG is having a hard time with it, we're like, well, I mean, I could see that. And the fact that Microsoft really hasn't said much at all about Fable other than, hey, I'd like to show you this. I think Matt Booty mentioned every time he went there, he was blown away and would love to show people more about it, but they just haven't yet. It's not impossible to think that there could have been issues, and sure, maybe they could have restarted development, but for now, the rumor that was making the rounds about Fable being in complete disarray to where they had to move to Unreal Engine does not seem to be true. Next up, let's talk about Square Enix and less of their blockchain initiative and more about, I don't know, video games. This one having to do with Final Fantasy and potentially a big announcement that's coming up that's not related to Final Fantasy VII Remake, which obviously is a big push for them next to Final Fantasy 16. We can see this posted up over on Square Enix's website with Final Fantasy, where they say, Happy New Year to all. Final Fantasy 16 is set to release this year, which means Yoshi P needs your support now more than ever. Cheer him on as he gives it all down the stretch. They also say, development is picking up speed on the title I'm producing, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I'm sure many of your collective imaginations are running wild, trying to picture how we'll recreate some of the game's most iconic scenes, and we'll have more to share about that when the time is right. By the way, there are some interesting scenes that people have been arguing back and forth as to what happened in that scene for years and years with Final Fantasy VII, because you look at some of the visuals, there's a lot left to the imagination, I'll say, with some of those cutscenes. But here's the part that really has people talking, because they went ahead and addressed Final Fantasy 16. Then they addressed 7 Rebirth. So this would have nothing to do with either of those, where they say there's another big announcement unrelated to Final Fantasy 7 that I can't say anything about just yet. Rest assured, we're working hard to make sure 2023 is the most exciting year yet. There's a couple of possibilities here, but I've pretty much narrowed it down to Final Fantasy Tactics Remaster. That was part of the NVIDIA leak, the GeForce Now leak, and that thing's been dead on this entire way. I saw some people mention Dirge of Cerberus. Could they go back and do a remaster remake similar to Crisis Core Reunion? They could. I believe they've mentioned they're not interested in doing that. And also, Vincent hasn't even been introduced into the new Final Fantasy VII universe. So, if anything, that may be tackled in downloadable content similar to what they did with Yuffie with Final Fantasy VII Remake. And after seeing the success for Tactics Ogre Reborn, both critically and commercially, to me, it makes sense that Final Fantasy Tactics Remastered would be next up, and I think would be very, very exciting for old school Final Fantasy fans who remember playing that back in the day on the original PlayStation. I'd be there day one. I'd probably buy multiple copies if it came out on the PlayStation and the Switch. That's how big of a fan I am of that original Final Fantasy Tactics game. So I'm crossing my fingers that's the big reveal, but I guess we'll find out this year. Next up, let's talk about the FTC, Xbox, the Activision Blizzard deal. This has continued to move along, and I think a lot of people keep raising their eyebrows the more and more the FTC continues to respond and talk, because they are doing some very weird things, almost twisting themselves into a pretzel to argue against the acquisition, just try to have it make sense from their position. For example, one company that Microsoft has brought up quite a bit for reasons as to why Call of Duty is not a necessity to run a successful gaming platform is Nintendo. Nintendo doesn't have Call of Duty, but the Switch continues to roll along. I mean, we're seeing record sales still from the system, and we're even thinking it might end up being the best-selling platform of all time. It's going to depend on how Nintendo treats, like I said, the next 2 years or so, but it's possible. In terms of software, it's doing really, really well. But the FTC decided to maybe change some things up here when it comes to how Nintendo is viewed in the gaming market. Take a look at this. This is posted up by Tweaktown. They say in its Phase 3 administrative decision opposing the Microsoft-Activision merger, the FTC defines the high-performance console market as Gen 9 systems like the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X and S. Since the Switch is technically a Gen 8 console because it launched in 2017 and lacks comparative power akin to the competitor's newer hardware, Nintendo is not included in this market. So you can see why, even in this article, the writer seems confused. I mean, you're basically saying, well, Nintendo's system isn't as powerful as the Series X or the PS5, so despite it doing really well and selling within the video game marketplace, we can't compare them. Well, Microsoft was signing a deal with them for 10 years to also put Call of Duty there. I didn't think it was a high-performance system. How can it run Call of Duty? And this is the thing I mean when I say people are kind of raising their eyebrows at the FTC, where they're trying to twist things around to make it appear like their position is at least correct in some way. It's looking less and less likely that they're going to have much of a case at all as they roll through going to some sort of arbitration or court. I'm sure there are a lot of lawyers that will figure all of that out, but it doesn't seem like a very strong case from the FTC side. And the fact that they say that you have to ignore Nintendo despite being a massive part of the industry. I mean, they're like 98% of Japan's market at this time, and they've been incredibly strong in North America, and we've seen in the UK sales charts, it's always Switch and Pokemon and Mario Kart, of course. So to say that it's not comparable despite all the dollars being the same amount in terms of spend when it comes to revenue, it's a very strange thing for the FTC to do, but that's the only way it would make sense for their position, is to legitimately make a category that they can exclude Nintendo from. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Ubisoft's Star Wars game that is currently in development. They announced this. It's kind of flown under the radar since then, mostly because we haven't seen a lot about it. Just heard that, oh, Ubisoft is making an open world Star Wars game, and the rest is up to our imagination, at least for now, because we can see this over on Twitter from Julian. Julian is the creative director, by the way, at Ubisoft, who says, "Happy New Year to you all. 2023 is going to be huge for us. Join the adventure." And we can see Star Wars there. If we go over to the website, it's just still titled The Star Wars Project. So they're still working out the title for it, but it says Ubisoft has announced is collaborating with Disney and Lucasfilm Games on a new story-driven open-world video game set in the Star Wars galaxy. By the way, it will be built in the Snowdrop engines that I'm sure will look really good, as we've seen more and more titles come out, even again on the Switch, like Mario Rabbids, that takes full advantage of that engine and it looks great. So I'm curious how this is going to be tackled tackled here by Ubisoft, since they do like to monetize their open world games. Further, it seemed like Disney was a bit concerned with how far EA pushed it, but Ubisoft, Star Wars, open world, I'm trying to figure out if they're going to go the route of Assassin's Creed or Far Cry, or try to come up with maybe a new path for Star Wars. And what character will we play? Will we create our own? There's, like I said, a lot of questions right now, but I do like that they seem to be teasing we could be finding out more about this throughout 2023, because to me, the more Star Wars games we can have, I'd say the better, because I'd say the real problem for a while was that EA was the only company making them. So I would like to see larger publishers and developers come in like Ubisoft to maybe provide some competition for EA, and it seems like they're responding themselves with Jedi Survivor coming up soon. So hey, it's great to see this as a Star Wars fan and someone who enjoys video games, to merge them together in a better way than what we had with well, the start of Battlefront 2. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're gonna take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, when do you expect Fable to release? Look at this, 2027 is leading the votes. Wow, no confidence at all. Or hey, maybe it's the effect of that rumor that was going around, I don't know. 2024 is second, and then 2025 is third. You know, I'm between 2024 and 2025, with the main reason being we saw Starfield get delayed from its holiday time slot in 2022 into 2023, and I currently have Fable in my mind Q4 2024, so that holiday, which means it could also get delayed into 2025. That's sort of where I'm sitting right now, Fable being a big time release for the holiday 2024. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Phoenix, saying, if everything becomes digital, many game stores will cease to exist. The interesting thing about the relationship here is, if game stores don't have games to sell, there's no reason to sell a system. Even big box stores, Target, Walmart, Best Buy, why would they sit around selling systems they don't make any money on at all, when the games at least bring them in some value, accessories, etc.? So the video game market would take a very weird shift to where it would just be all online, which is kind of what we're doing now, technically. We're just currently talking about these systems making their way into stores for the first time this generation. So I guess Sony's been able to shift 25 million or so PS5s without having to put them in big box stores. So maybe we really are trending in that direction, but I still think these big companies want to have their game systems in stores. So that's why this shift away from physical media is such a weird thing for them to navigate currently. I mean, who knows, maybe in 25 or 30 years, we eliminate the system altogether because there's no lag with cloud gaming. And at that time, I'll be the really old grandpa who's playing his GameCube and his PS5, you know, the retro systems. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here. Today was the wild rumor that around the Xbox and Fable that there was trouble development where it had to be restarted internally. Why do you think it was so easy for many people online to believe that Xbox would have an issue developing that game? And then also, what about the big surprise for Final Fantasy fans in 2023? And then the FTC creating its new category of high-performance systems just so they can exclude Nintendo from the conversation. Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.